Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting BPAC to order. Roll call, please. Ms. Barber.
All right. Brian Good.
Here.
Adam Lynch.
Here.
Chris Clark. Jamie Jackson. Pastowick.
Here.
Stephen Littlewood. Aaron Frank.
Here.
Kevin Brown. Linda Lasut. Joy Himes. Ben Matters. Kristen Talkin-Spalding. Lee Anderson. Is she online?
No, I've got Deborah Lately and Devin Bell online.
Okay. Deborah Fultz. Deborah Lately is online.
Here.
Rob Maple. Thank you. Jim Lynch.
Here.
John Summer.
Here.
Brantley Kendall. And Yamina Jordan.
Here.
All right. Roll has been called.
Thank you. Moving on to approval of the meeting agenda for this evening. Are there any comments or changes on the agenda?
Move to approve.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, moving on to approval of the March 3rd meeting minutes. Does anyone have any comments on the meeting minutes?
I have one that I emailed in.
Okay. Good on that one?
That's that correction.
Mr. Chair, just a real basic thing. It's just for like clean up. There's like a gap there in the committee members list, so just
Okay.
close the gap, that's all. Thank you.
While we're looking at formatting here on the agenda, I noticed that it still lists Craig Pennington as the chair in the watermark.
Oops. Thank you.
Ryan gets his due.
Will they all have the corner torn out?
Wait.
I should have torn out that corner
Which one are you looking at?
on our agenda.
Yeah, on the agenda.
Oh, on the agenda. Okay. All right, back in.
You know, and last time he was here, his name wasn't anywhere on the roll or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's not here tonight, so I didn't call him.
Okay. Okay.
Catch it.
That was good. Sharp eye.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Any other comments on the minutes?
That was just that little gap.
If there are no other comments, is there a motion to approve?
I so move as corrected. Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Moving on to FAMPO Administrator Report, Mr. Willis.
There we go. Shall I stand in front?
Sure.
BPAC May 2022. Next slide. So I just want to, anyway, we'll talk about funding, we'll talk about survey, and give you a little bit about the study. Next slide. So, the East-West study, as you've heard many times before, is a study that we're doing to look at the East-West movement of people and goods, period. So all modes of transportation are being examined in the study. It's been going for quite some time, and we've come to the end of phase 1. And we're now working on phase 2, and our consultants, PhD, are now working on the study for us. Next slide. One of the projects we'd identified in the East-West study that needed work is to continue the VCR trail, to show you all interested in, through the train station to connect bikes into the train station. You've got right over here existing bike racks. But there isn't a cycle path formally that leads to the train station, which seems stupid, and the VCR trail ends at the cobblestone complex. So we thought that would be a great thing to study. However, this connection of the VCR trail has now become a smart scale application this year. And so we are not going to continue studying this in the East-West study because it seems pointless to design something that they have already submitted into smart scale. So we've removed this one, but do still think that the facilities around the bike racks need to be upgraded. There's no cover to protect the bikes against the weather, and we think that should still be done, but it's something that we're looking at in the east-west study to do, and we've also looked at, carry on the next slide. There's some examples of kind of things we could think of to address that. That's when the bike racks are in full use. People do use them. That's an actual photograph from about 2 years ago, I think. But we think that some weatherproof facilities, maybe even security, should be introduced to protect your bike. It's no good coming back from wherever you go on the train and your bike is wet, the saddle's wet, there's snow on it. Maybe somebody stole the front tire. So we think that some facilities like this should be envisaged for the Fredericksburg train station. Next slide. The Spotsylvania train station, we are proposing, in terms of east-west movements, this is the most obvious east-west movement. And so just our first proposal is to look at how we connect, let's say, from the Germanna College, but particularly down, I think that's US 70, or it's Mills Drive, to the train station. Also, the East Coast Greenway comes north-south through this region, and Jacob has pointed out to us that we should be looking at some sort of connection also to the train station, but it may continue on a different alignment after the train station. So that's one area that we think needs to be addressed in terms of bike-impaired facilities. Carry on. Also at that train station, the placement of the bike racks is not really close to the train station. It seems to have been done quite far out. We think those should be moved closer to the actual station building itself. And again, covering protection from the rain. The Brook Station in Stafford is more complicated. The placement of the station historically is not really close to big residential development. You're also having the new Stafford downtown that's being built over here. And if those developments grow, how do we get people on their bikes to the train station if we want them to bike to the station and then take transit of some kind? So we've looked at some possible alignments. We'll have to see in time which of those is the best to use, but we're trying to find ways that we can get at least bikes and also transit to that train station in future so that you can actually bike or take the bus to get to the train station. The parking lot at this station, I'm told, has been really fully utilized before COVID. So if the parking lot is really full, then we do need to look for additional ways to get to the train station, and we're looking at that. Next slide. The downtown Stafford Transit Center, which we were working on this morning, actually, we're trying to find a location for a transit center in Stafford that could take freight buses, where you could have multiple buses stopping so that people could transfer from one bus to another bus in the same center. And we heard from Stafford this morning that they've got some, apart from these 4 locations which we have already looked at, they've got some additional suggestions of other locations that we should examine as well. So we're going to revisit that in the coming weeks. Next one. BRT proposals. I can't give you a sneak preview to what we're going to present in the, what BHP are going to present in the Monday stakeholder group, because that would be a bit of a cheat if I showed you before I've showed the stakeholder group. But we are looking at this straight line over here is Route 3 that goes out to, this is the Spotsylvania Mall and Spotsylvania Town Center, that's Central Park. The university is over here, that's the current Freight Transit Center, this is downtown, William Street, and so on. We looked in phase 1 at 6 different alternative alignments to put in a rapid bus. We're looking at one trunk route that goes through densely populated and very dense shopping and business communities to try to get our first really rapid bus in the region. The buses, as you know, are smallish regular buses which travel once every hour, and in one case, once every 30 minutes. But to have a bus once every hour doesn't really give confidence to people wanting to use transit, because if you just miss that bus by 1 minute, you're going to wait a whole hour before the next one arrives. And sometimes the driver will leave 5 minutes early or 10 minutes late. And so it's difficult, even though there's a published schedule, people don't want to rely on the bus because you don't know if the bus is going to be on time. You don't know if you walk 10 minutes to the bus stop and then the guy's gone 1 minute before you. Now you totally... People don't typically use buses in large amounts. The bus comes once every hour. So what we try to do here is find at least one route in the region where we can put a bus every 15 minutes or every 20 minutes or whatever the case is, and get federal funding and state funding to put in a kind of bus rapid transit or a BRT light. We won't have the full functionality of the really expensive BRT systems, but we're looking at possible alignments. Our consultants in phase 2 now have taken our proposals, our options, and refined that down to options that are likely to get the highest ridership for the lowest cost and would be viable. So they'll present that on Monday, and after Monday we can discuss this with you. Next slide.
So Ian, we're looking at the older version.
You're looking at the current version.
Okay, but
they have produced a new alignment in the same area that takes aspects of these routes. For example, one of the things that we said in the stakeholder group meeting when we presented these options, together with all the ridership numbers and the cost estimates and all that FAMPO staff did, is that they said one of the drawbacks of all of these routes is that they all have a circle, and those types of routes don't usually get high ridership because people don't want to have to go all the way around the circle when they're on their way home. They want to go back on a route that goes exactly the same road one way and the other direction. So whether it's north, south, or east and west, it should stay on the same road and not have big circles like this, because by the time you get back to where you were coming from, it could take a long time again. And the whole point about these buses is that they need to be fast. We're moving away from one slow bus every hour to a faster bus every 15 minutes. That's the point. We want to get you quickly to where you need to go. Whether you're a student, whether you're an essential service worker, whether you're a young person in your first job, we want to provide some rapid transit options. So we're looking at an alignment which does include spots in the town center, Central Park, the university, the hospital, the train station next door here, and the central business area. So those you'll see after Monday.
And sir, one route.
Sorry?
Looking for one route.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're building one very rapid route, which will become like a trunk route, a spine, but it will connect to all of the other Fred routes so that you can get off the regular Fred bus and get on this one, and this one goes rapidly to where you want to go. So it will provide travel to people on the alignment, but also connecting people. So if you're coming from Stafford, which is not on this alignment, you can get off at the Fred Central Transit Center and connect onto the rapid bus and go out to the shopping area or go to the hospital or the university or whatever. The idea is to try and have at least one rapid route. If it's really successful, of course, then in the future, you can add an additional rapid route. For example, up US 1 to Stafford. It's likely that would, in the future, then also be viable. But what we're trying to do is get one route that won't fail, so that when it succeeds, success breeds success with transit, right? So once you're really successful with one thing, people who fund you and people who make political decisions will give you a second one and a third one because you've proved the concept. So we're trying to find really the best, most successful possible alternative so that if it works, you can then build on it with further routes. But the interim period, the regular Fred buses will still connect to this so that you can transfer. Fred Transit is also about to start their transit strategic plan, which is going to reevaluate their routes as well. So that may make the connections better if we put this out there as they're about to start their studies. I mean,
So does the demand warrant having more buses available? What, I'm sorry? There is, okay, so having more frequent buses rotating between transit, straight line routes would be...
So we know that because by Fred going fare-free on the 28th of February, I believe,
Right.
their ridership went up in 1 month 42%.
Wow, okay.
So just by taking the, I don't know what the fare was, like $1.50 or something, but just taking that fare price away, which is I think less than $2, I could be wrong, but anyway, it's not a lot of money. The fare is fairly inexpensive. Just by removing that small fee, you've gone up 42% in ridership in 1 month. That proves the fact that if you provide what people want, they'll take it.
Absolutely.
And if we can add a much faster bus on a more regular, you know, if you miss a bus and another one comes in 15 minutes, you might just wait the 15 minutes. It's not such a long thing. So that's the plan for here. But again, it has to be in the dense spots of the region. You can't put this out in rural Spotsylvania. Nobody will get on because there's no one there, right?
One more, sorry. Between Mary Washington, do you think there could be a Fred bus between Fredericksburg and Stafford locations? Do you think that would be a wise idea, especially in the midst of this dwindling pandemic?
There are already buses between Fredericksburg and Stafford.
Just a direct route between the hospitals, back and forth.
I mean, that's physically possible, yes, but it is. I can't comment on how close that is to what they have now.
Okay.
I haven't memorized their current routes well enough to be able to tell you. Well, route F2 could probably do that with one extra mile.
Right.
We can find you the answer to that question before your next meeting, but I don't have it in my head.
Okay.
Fine. So just quickly, what is happening with traffic? We graph traffic counts. The red is freight, the orange is regular automobiles, cars, and the blue is all the traffic in the Fredericksburg district. So this is in our region, what the traffic looks like. When COVID happened, the highways and byways, well, the traffic dropped to nothing. Then we've seen a climb out of that terrible drop. This was March and April 2020. But if you look at the gray line represents what the number of traffic trips on the roads and highways were prior to COVID. That's the average, right? That's the zero line. So the question is always, well, have we gotten back to pre-pandemic levels? Well, pandemic levels are represented by the gray line that runs through the middle. You can see here that the red line, the freight, has been way above pre-pandemic levels since May 2020. Freight traffic was not affected by the pandemic and has grown that much since pre-pandemic levels. And that is about 11 to 13%, maybe 14% more than the amount of freight traffic you had before COVID. Significantly grown. Automobile traffic, the orange line, still it breaches the pre-pandemic levels for periods, and then it's still every now and again. This big drop here, can you guess what that was?
Oh, snowstorm?
The big snowstorm. So that was the big snowstorm when the I-95 shut down, right? It crashed the traffic. Did the same thing to Fred Transit. Their ridership numbers also crashed at that same point in time. So that just gives you an idea of what's happening with the traffic. The freight traffic has gone up. It's not been affected by the pandemic, but people driving their cars has.
I'm just curious, are you seeing any correlation between those volumes and fuel prices?
So I can't tell you, because I haven't graphed the fuel prices against this graph, but I do know the historical answer to that. At MIT, we had a study looking at that, and fuel prices have a direct correlation with the amount of traffic, automobile traffic. And also, they have a direct correlation with the amount of people who choose to take transit. The most successful thing to switch people from taking a car to taking the train or taking a bus is double the fuel price. It always shifts people, every time, historically. But there is a, what do you call that knuckle point? There is a...
Inflection point.
Inflection point is the word I'm looking for. There is an inflection point where it switches. So people will tolerate higher fuel prices up to a certain point, and there's a point at which they say, I'm not taking this anymore, which is either protest, or I get hold of my senator, or I take the bus, or I take the train, but I do something. I don't just sit. So I sit and take it for a while, and then there comes a crunch point where I'm like, not going to take it anymore. So that's what happens, then they switch to other forms of transportation. There's Fred Bus. I told you about the massive increase. So that was at the old price when you had to pay for your ticket, and that's what happened when it was free. And you can see the red all the way back there. It kind of bumbles along, and then suddenly fare free, massive increase in ridership. These higher levels are, 2019 pre-pandemic ridership numbers. We're now approaching pre-pandemic ridership numbers because it's gone fare free. And I made the comment in the policy committee that we didn't see the jump after they started an hour earlier service, which is what I thought was going to happen. It didn't happen. Partly probably because it takes people time to change jobs. You can now take other jobs because you can get there with a bus in the morning, but that takes time to make those changes. Next slide. BPD and CMAC. So we asked each jurisdiction to give us an application only for active transportation. The only new applications we took in this year were for active transportation, and the cities, Spotsylvania and Stafford, each got one. We scored and ranked those. Scroll up. Thank you. And so we fully funded those 3 active transportation projects. The BPAC Trail Bridge, the cost increased dramatically on that particular bridge. We fully funded it again, so that is that. We fully funded the new transit in Spotsylvania and the leased commuter parking spaces. We partially funded Fred bus purchases for their replacement buses, additional funding to Onville Road, Route 1 and Exit 126 improvements, and the Garrisonville Road widening. Next slide. That's not yet approved by the policy committee, but that's our proposals. TAC has endorsed the funding proposals. We're waiting for policy committee to approve those, and then they'll go to the CTB for approval. The outer connector, there's been some noise about it again. The CTAC chair is pushing strongly that we come up with proposals that are workable for an outer connector because of the difficulty getting between Spotsylvania, the city, and Stafford without going on the I-95. And when the I-95, when an incident happens and it becomes heavily congested or locked down like we saw in the snowstorm, how else do you get across the river? So he has suggested 2 alignments. CTAC is continuing to discuss those. The one proposal is an eastern bypass, which is mostly in Stafford. The other proposal he's making is for a western bypass, which goes mostly through Orange and Culpeper counties, but also there are some brief drawings of what he has in mind. That is the Centerport Parkway, and there's a connector down here to Route 218. And on that side, this is US 17, and that is Route 3 out in Lake of the Woods, and this is in Orange, and then in Culpeper counties, and then into Stafford.
Yeah. On that eastern route, would you not want to get to Route 3? Route 3 is the primary east-west.
Well,
I think the next slide shows that.
if you move up to the next slide, so this is his proposed addition as the dotted line. And Becky, do you just want to talk about the two green lines as well?
Yes, this would go from, the new route would go from Centerport Parkway and hug the Street, and starting in 218, White Oak Road in Pennsylvania, and then it turns to, excuse me,
Bloomsbury?
Clarendon,
Oh, Caledon.
Caledon.
Okay, the road name changes. And then traffic can take Bloomsbury Road, to Route 3, and then Route 3 to, Fort Conway Road to 301. There is a project, to, address the existing safety, crash problem here at 301 and Fort Conway Road, to put a, alternative intersection, basically a gun handle, to prevent those left turn crashes. So the idea and the supposition that the CTAC took was to use existing crossings of the river, using existing roads where possible. And so the idea is to allow traffic to use existing roads to get over to this crossing of the Rappahannock.
So this is not a FAMPO policy yet, and may never be, I don't know, but anyway, this is a proposal by the CTAC chair, and a good number of the CTAC members agree with the idea, at least in principle. Next slide.
Okay, hold on. If I'm hearing, the idea is that the new eastern bypass would come down and hit Caledon Road, where Bloomsbury Road intersects Caledon Road, and then the rest of the way to Route 3 would be handled via upgrading and improvements on Bloomsbury Road.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, we acknowledge that, or the CTAC acknowledges that an improved two-lane section of Bloomsbury and Fort Conway would be needed. And Bloomsbury is the trailhead to the Dahlgren Trail, I noticed there, near the landfill.
Right.
And that's where the King George landfill is on Bloomsbury, and gets a lot of traffic.
So I'm just giving you a little update of things that are going on. I don't want to belabor this because this is a bike and pedestrian committee. I'm just, in the background, there are these things going on. I'm just giving you a very, hopefully, brief thing, and I'm going on too long. So I don't want to belabor this. It's not a bike proposal. We are working on a FAMPO vision survey. Here is that we want to develop a vision for FAMPO. What is the point of FAMPO? Why do we spend all this time here and not at our favorite bike club or at our favorite
bar?
Why are we spending our time here?
Sorry.
So, no, that's all good. I want to develop a vision for FAMPO. In order to do that, we want you all to tell us what you think the vision should be. But in order to get your feedback, Coley, who sits over there at the back, has worked with me to develop a survey to ask your opinions on 10 questions that we're going to send you. So, next slide. We will send you on email a survey about the vision of FAMPO and what it should be. And it's 10 quick questions. We are asking you to answer those questions. You'll receive it on email with a unique number, so you don't have to fill your name in anywhere. And because it's an online survey, we won't know who filled that in. Only one person will know what your survey number is, and they won't tell anybody else. So you can answer the questions anonymously. Please help us determine FAMPO's guiding vision. When you get the email, we're sending it to members and alternates of our committees, not to the general public, because we don't think the public should tell us what we should be doing. We should be ourselves defining what we should be doing. The public are free to comment on projects. That's the vision should be set by those who spend all the hours. Next one. So there we go. We're asking you to not take long. If you could send it back to us by May the 20th. As I said, it's online and it's only 10 questions. So it probably won't, not them a multiple choice where you just pick the one you like. We will then compile this and show the summary of the results to you all, to the committees. This is what you all said in your various surveys. And then we'll use that together with research to try to develop a vision for FAMPO, and we'll create maybe a 5-page vision document that says, this in a quick nutshell is what we're trying to achieve at FAMPO. This is why we spend our time here. Next one. Freight Summit. We are concerned about this picture. Do you see this picture? I showed you that graph earlier of how freight is growing in our region. And it's growing faster than any other form of transportation, freight traffic. So what that does on the highways is that if the freight traffic is growing at 11 or 12% every 18 months to 2 years, you thought you had gridlock problems before this, wait till you see what's going to happen in the future. And we need to think about the problems experienced by the freight companies themselves. These are the people that are delivering our groceries to the stores. These are the people that are delivering our furniture. These are the people that whatever. We need to have them. And we want to attract jobs to our region. And if companies struggle to do business here, they're not going to grow the jobs available in the region. So we want to help address their concerns. So there are a bunch of questions we want to ask. And we are planning a freight summit in September. We put it in the budget for next year. And we want to try and get to the bottom of what are the problems? Freight congestion, freight delay times. And we discovered already a couple of interesting things. The first one is that the largest freight traffic delay time in the state of Virginia is between where you're sitting now and Washington, D.C. Beats any other part. It's more than the freight delays going into Norfolk Harbor right here, this stretch between here and D.C. So the freight is slowing down. It's not getting to us as quickly. We need to fix it. Next slide. Is that the last slide? Great. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview of what's going on at FAMPO. Sorry it took so long, but I'll hand back to the chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. All right. Next item is public comment. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak at this time? Not?
I'm actually not from the public. I'm looking at me. I'm sorry. I'm Joe Bonds, and I'm...
Okay.
He's my guest.
Okay.
I apologize.
Great. No, that's fine. All right. If there's no one here from the public, did we receive any comments? Email? Okay. We'll move on to discussion items, and I think Mr. Hollis is back up again for Unified Planning and Work Program.
Gosh, okay. Well, I'm not going to read you the whole document this time. You've got it in your pack, so I presume you've seen it. There are some key projects that we've put into this next program. The Freight Summit is one of them. We are also looking at working with VDOT to update the travel demand model. We've got to update it every couple of years because when you build a new road, this model that's supposed to predict where all the problems are going to be in the future doesn't know that you've built a new road until you tell it. So we're going to update the travel demand model. We have removed some projects that have been hanging around in our planning document for a while. There's a Route 610 study that's meant to be done in Stafford. We've handed the funds to Stafford and said, please do your own study, because otherwise it shows up in our books the whole time. The money's sitting there, nothing's happening. So Stafford is going to do that study, and we've taken it out of our program. We're continuing with the East-West Mobility Study. It's going to finish in December, but it's in the new UPWP, which kicks off on the 1st of July. The VCR Trail Study, working out how to, in future, get the VCR Trail across the I-95 somehow, and better crossings over Route 1 and Route 3, because currently you have to cross at grade, and as those two roads get more traffic and get wider, when you add more lanes and other things, it's going to be harder and harder to cross these two particular roads. So that's in that study. That's about it, the major things that are in here. It's in your pack though, so you've had a chance to read it. I'm not going to belabor the point. We're just asking you if you have any comments. It's out for public comment. Public comment period closes on the 18th. So if you have any comments, it would be great if you get them to us in the next week. If anything you think of we should change or whatever, please just do let us know. I'll take any questions, Mr. Chair, but I'm not going to read through the document.
Questions? Thank you, Ian.
Great.
All right, next up is active transportation provisions. Carrie.
All right, this is just a brief overview of the active transportation provisions in the new infrastructure bill that's recently passed. So it's, the bill is a big bill, it's a big deal. It sets funding and policy for the next 5 years until 2026. And just over half of it, the $1.2 trillion, is for surface infrastructure. It's twice the size of the tax that it replaces. Highway funding was increased by 9%, but transit funding and rail, transit funding was increased by 79%, but look at rail. Rail was a big winner, 750% increase in rail funding for this bill. Next slide. But what about active transportation? So there are, in the big picture, there's very little set aside for bike ped, but there are some notable increases. So the STBG grant is now 10% instead of 1.5%, so that's a big jump, a lot of extra money there. And also, states and MPOs now have to spend at least 2.5% of their federal funding on designing complete street standards, policies, and prioritization plans. So that is going to change the way that we do a lot of things around here, I think for the better. And there's a new bridge formula program to be evaluated based on benefits to non-vehicular and public transportation users. So this potentially means more bike ped facilities on new and rehabilitated bridges. Unfortunately, there are still loopholes, and they're working on guidance for those. Next slide. So terms to note, complete streets, that means a street that's designed and operated for the safety and comfort of everyone trying to use it. It is no longer an auto-centric default for design. Not all streets, of course, are acceptable. They don't all work for this. But the idea is that the area's transportation network as a whole has to provide a safe and convenient journey for everyone. Vision Zero, you may not have heard much about. It's actually from Sweden, and it's used widely in Europe, and now it's coming over here. It's a strategy to move towards eliminating all traffic fatalities and severe injuries. The idea is instead of worrying about people's behavior, you design to protect them from their own behavior. So it's a design for human mistakes, reducing kinetic energy in the system, and a shared responsibility for safety, as well as proactively identifying and addressing risks before fatalities happen. We do things. Along with this, there are new and revised grant programs. So this is a new one, the Active Transportation Infrastructure Investment Program, $200 million annually. This is especially for transportation projects that build on a larger network. The Transportation Alternative Set Aside, or the TAP program that we're all familiar with, it is on its own now. It's no longer under STBG, and it is 10% of STBG instead of 1.5%. So potentially a lot more money for TAP. The Safe Routes to School program is also on its own now with designated funding. So it's going to have more money based on school enrollment numbers. And the SPR program for Complete Streets, this is also new for Complete Streets. So it helps give money to design, create complete street standards, and emphasize connecting communities. So I think these are all positive developments. Next slide. Oh yeah, and there's more. So there's also the Carbon Reduction Program. So this is a carve out from the state federal transportation program. This is for TMA areas, like in North Stafford in our case. We administer that, and then the state administers otherwise. So that's a new pot of money. for bike ped projects. Also, the Metropolitan Planning Program, I already briefly talked about that. That's about the 2.5% for complete streets designs. And then there's Safe Streets and Roads for All. This one is for Vision Zero. This last one, this is meant for extreme weather resilience. Primarily, it's $1.4 billion, but it can be used to incorporate bike ped infrastructure into your resilience programs. So, what's next? This is, of course, far from perfect, but it's a large shift in policy, safety and mobility for everyone instead of being auto default. The new requirements have been included in our UPWP that was just spoken of, and we're still waiting for specific guidance from the FHWA and FTA. I think they are also trying to figure this out. It's so new that guidelines are still being developed. So all of you, as BPAC, will have an integral role in developing our complete streets to the task, and I'm sure you are. Next slide. And that is it. I have a question?
Can I just make one comment before you take the rest of the question? The significant thing, federal government, Congress, by approving this law, has made it a requirement for MPs like ourselves to develop complete streets policies and to spend a certain amount of our income on doing that. It's not an option. They're saying we're giving you additional funding in the legislation over the next 5 years, but the quid pro quo is we want you to do a couple of things. Make the streets more accessible to people who are disabled. Put more transit stops on each street. Make sure that you've got the bike and ped sidewalks and bike paths on those streets. It's not an option. We now have to produce something at the end to say we've done this. And we don't know the details. That's exactly how do you want us to give you the feedback, give you the documents, whatever else. We're waiting for guidance. But the big change is that it's not we're encouraging you, it's now we're requiring you to do this.
And I assume, by extension, you'd have to track those expenditures, whether it be staff resources or consultants or whatever you may be utilizing to hit that requirement.
Yes, and the only way you can get around those stuff requirements is if you produce a complete streets plan. So you either got to bean count your hours, or you got to produce the plan and we can see that you've got a plan. If you haven't got a plan, you need to show how much time you're spending or your staff time on developing these proposals.
Okay.
How does the Vision Zero plan work? What is it? I get the Norway.
It's more like a paradigm shift from the idea that we need to control human behavior on the road to instead saying humans are going to be humans and they're going to make all kinds of crazy mistakes. Let's engineer the system so that no matter what kind of mistakes they make, they don't die.
How do you do that?
Well, there's many things that you do. Everything from changing road geometry to changing speeds to changing designs of different facilities. It's very comprehensive. It's basically sort of a philosophy.
Okay, cool.
I was intrigued by the increased spending for safe routes to schools. Can you talk a little bit more about that program and what sort of funding could be available for our municipalities?
So all I can speak to is that we currently have a Safe Routes to School program, which is under Transportation Alternatives. Pennsylvania.
And we? The GWRC, FAMPO, or?
The United States.
Oh.
Federally has the Safe Routes to School program. Okay. It's under Transportation Alternatives. In our region, this last go-round, Pennsylvania was successful in competing for Safe Routes to School for a sidewalk to get to Chancellor.
Chancellor Park Drive.
Yeah.
Great.
Piedmont. Yeah.
So under this program, there will be more money to be awarded.
Okay, and what sort of, did you have to get the board's approval, Jacob, to enroll Spotsylvania in the Safe Routes to School program?
It's a prioritization, really. I mean, and the board does have to buy into the specific projects. certain, one of the problems that we have, and I think we'll see that shortly with the smart scales, is there's a number of slots that you have, and I will be honest with you, with like the transportation alternatives, we actually had 3 projects from Spotsylvania County, and they all scored extremely high, but only one of them received funding. So hopefully we can send number 2 up next time again and give her another shot. But yeah, we have to get local buy-in, and then.
All right, cool. So I'd like to learn more about that in the future. I don't know if it's.
Sure, and
Get a presentation on that, maybe?
as we learn more,
Yeah.
so they're still figuring out how the changes are gonna be, but all we know is that there's going to be more money in it, so that's.
Cool.
Actually, he raised his hand.
Oh, sorry.
This dovetails with it, so if it's better for a future conversation, please let's wait until then. But the minimum grant size of $1 million, what does that mean?
Oh, okay. Well, just that I guess they're figuring you can't build much for less than that?
Yeah, it seems like that's a very large floor that might eliminate some potential improvements.
That's a good point, like if you had a smaller improvement?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to investigate that.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
I would say in the modern era, I'm shocked at how expensive these projects are coming, just for sidewalks. It blows my mind.
Yep, I'll second that.
I'm from Africa. I'm horrified at how much things cost in the US.
Yeah.
When they talk about a traffic circle and they want you to set aside $9 million. $9 million. You need 9 millionaires to give their entire net asset value to you to build one traffic circle?
It's a real challenge.
If anyone can recall, the school system had a problem in Stafford County, you probably know about this. The buses weren't able to pick up the kids, and how do we utilize some of this money to, I don't know if Spotsylvania had the same crisis, but, during the winter, there were a lot of problems with buses getting to the children on time and having enough people and enough buses and enough routes cleared to get kids to school. So
They had to adjust their start times for the school to accommodate this issue with the buses up there.
Right.
Found that out.
It's a big issue.
Yeah.
So how can we do something with the funding that's available to make sure that never happens again? As a matter of fact, so that it's so improved, it's much better, 10 times better than it ever was.
So there may be funding sources for that, but this would be just for things that were not buses or automobiles. This is for walking or biking.
This would be for those residents who are very nearby, presumably have the most benefit from projects like this, where they're either riding their bike or walking to school, or maybe going there after hours to use the fields or something like that.
Understood, okay. Alrighty. Is there a budget for that then?
For what you were just speaking of?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with the specific program.
Maybe I'll ask Ian. Thank you. All right.
Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you, Carrie. All right.
Stay up here.
Yep, next up is proposal for
All right.
bike counter locations.
This is an action item, so let's talk about it. As you know, we have one bike counter. We used it last year in one spot, but this year we'd like to move it around, and I got several helpful suggestions from folks. I'm just going to go over them briefly, see what you all think about them. Next. So the first one is Cortland Park Frontage Trail along Smith Station Road here. I believe this would close a gap. Is that right?
Yeah, so Cortland Park was a rezoning project that we had in Spotsylvania County, and we were looking to expand on the success of the Spotsylvania Parkway Trail. If you're familiar with that, it goes from Route 1 all the way to Smith Station Levels Road. And ultimately, it actually crosses Route 1 and goes all the way up to Spotsylvania Regional Medical Center, and then up through Hospital Boulevard also to Mills Drive. So with the success of that, there is a lot of use on that with the Cortland Park project, what we're trying to do is extend that further up to the courthouse route corridor. And when they came in with the rezoning, we were able to get them to proffer roughly a quarter-mile section of that trail. So you see the kind of the housing developing along Smith Station Road. So you have a starting and a stopping trail right there across their frontage. So we have essentially a dead-end trail right now that's removed from the Spotsylvania Parkway trail by roughly a third of a mile. So the green space over to the intersection to the right there is lacking a trail surface. So frankly, what I'm trying to do with this one is get a baseline of how much use that dead-end trail is getting, at least even from the existing neighbors. It's funny, I had a conversation yesterday with Tim Hall with Tricord, who's actually, they're developing that project. And they said the HOA in there is really kind of getting on them. Well, we want this connection to the Spotsylvania Parkway Trail. And a few minutes ago, I talked about our TAP applications. Our number 2 application was closing that third-mile gap. It scored extremely well, but unfortunately, it wasn't funded, and we have to go back to the drawing board. So having this kind of baseline information, and I think we have previous data on Spotsylvania Parkway, the main trail.
Yeah.
I think that's really good to kind of report as a baseline and try to exhibit some support for interest in closing the gap. Seems logical to me, but the more the merrier when it comes to getting an application, make it as rosy as possible. So I think it's a logical one to close the gap. Existing infrastructure.
All right, next slide. So again, you were talking about Hospital Boulevard, one Pennsylvania Parkway east of I-95 and Hospital Boulevard.
Yeah, I don't know that, okay, I'm sorry. I'll be quick on this one. I don't know that we have counters that have been done in this area either, but that trail system does come over to the hospital and then it goes north up to Route 17. And so what we have there is, I think you're seeing the Spotsylvania Parkway, and then it goes up.
Yes.
So ultimately, where it goes up there, it runs into Germanna Connector Road up to Germanna Community College, and we're actively pursuing a shared use path up to Germanna Community College, and we have a Germanna Connector Road that is moving forward as a result of the VA hospital to be funded to connect that to Spotsylvania Avenue, and ultimately we'll essentially create a shared use path connection all the way really up to the real close to the Fred Hub site over there in Lee Hill. So again, kind of baseline numbers. I don't know how much use is over there right now, but I think it'd be a nice little background. So
Next slide. And this one, the Gordon B. Shelton footbridge. Now, Kevin Brown, who's not here, he's going to be our new members, suggested this one. Apparently, the city is considering not replacing that bridge, I think I heard from him, and he wanted to see how many people use it. Maybe support, maybe replacing it.
Is it that dotted green line?
Yeah.
That'd be the footbridge?
Yeah.
So, breaking development, the city added that to its budget this fiscal year. So they're doing a study on it in FY23, and then in FY24, they're actually gonna do the construction, and it's gonna use some sort of a VDOT grant, I think. Can't remember which one it is. So that's a great win. So
Yeah, great.
Maybe take that one off because it's already, seems like it's in the pipeline. The budget's not approved, but they did their first read on it, so it looks pretty promising.
Good, that's good news.
Yeah.
All right, next slide. So then Furnace Road sidewalk, which is right here. Furnace Road has a gap area. Maybe you can speak to this one some more, Brian?
So Furnace Road.
I noticed there are desire lines along it.
Yeah, so there was at one point some requests from, I don't know if it was multiple requests, but from the Vista Woods development to the south about having that connection up Furnace Road. There are some topographical challenges through there, which might make a sidewalk a little costly, a little more so than the average probably, but I'm not sure about desire lines. I was checking Street View to try to get a feel for that. I didn't really see too many, but there's such limited space there. It could be people just walking along the road and not necessarily on the shoulder.
I definitely saw where the sidewalk ended, but maybe not along the whole way.
Yeah, but it's a large development to the south, and you do have the connections up to the commercial destinations, so I imagine it's probably pretty frequent that people are going through there, but
Okay.
I don't frequent that area. I haven't seen a bunch of people personally.
All right.
And then
Is Stony Creek Drive?
yeah, and this one, so I actually live near here, and so off of Stony Creek, there are numerous townhouse developments as well as apartments and the single-family detached. There's quite a bit down there, and I frequently see people biking and walking, more so on the west side of Stony Creek Drive up through this area, and there seems to be a decent amount of space there, and you know the shoulder's pretty good as well, but there's just no facilities through that stretch.
Okay, next slide. So this one, I don't know about Chatham Bridge connection into Stafford. Currently there isn't a connection, but we could check and see who is going north off the bridge.
Yeah.
Next slide. And then Lafayette Boulevard at Wellington Woods. Now, there are plans to extend the sidewalk there, but it would be useful to see who's walking, how many people are walking there. Next slide. And then Fall Hill Avenue, this is a gap between two pieces of infrastructure, and there are certainly desire lines present there. Lots of folks are walking along this way past the Fall Hill Avenue path goes. So that's another potential one. Next slide. All right, so do we think all of these are appropriate and merit counting? Are there any that you want to remove from the list? Like the footbridge?
So I guess I had a question. What's the duration of the counter and being in each of these locations?
I think we're going to leave the counter a month at each location.
If you have, I'm just thinking on my feet here, so feel free to shout me down. I haven't thought this through. But if you have 6, and in a year you have 12 months, why don't you put 2 months each at one of these locations?
Sure.
And you get 60 days worth of count.
Yeah.
Remember, we've got to send a staff member out each time to go and cut it off the pole and go and take it to the new place that connects to the pole and download the data and all that kind of stuff. So it does involve, I mean, it's not a major task, but it does involve some work. And if you have 6 locations and 12 months, why not just do 2 months, 2 months, 2 months throughout the year? But by all means, do whatever you want.
I personally think the 2 months is a great idea.
Well, then, in that case, let's go up to the slide that has the list of all the locations.
You're going to say something?
Yeah, I feel like we had a presentation that made a lot of sense. Because obviously the traffic is influenced by weather and things like that.
Right.
If you're counting in the wintertime, it may not be doing justice. So I'm wondering if there should, if we do 2 months, should it almost be like a month in the prime time and a month in the off time?
That's what we used to do.
Okay.
When we had more counters, we would do 2 weeks in the summer and 2 weeks in the winter, or fall and spring or whatever, so we could get a rounded idea. And that would be appropriate.
If it's doable.
VDOT, did you speak at your last meeting about VDOT's counter and the fact that they want a permanent location?
Yeah, the state bike ped folks want to put a counter, but that's going to be on Belmont Dairy Farm. So they want to put it.
And locality, some of you also have bike counters. We only have one. We have 2. The one broke, and the cost of repairing it is almost the cost of buying a new one, and they're not cheap. So we decided not to repair the second one. So we have 1, and then we use streetlight data to supplement that in terms of more data. But
I feel they're just very surprising.
Speaking of streetlight data, now that we have these potential locations, is there a way to use that to kind of vet them so that we are not, we could use that as a filter potentially to remove some of these?
We can. Streetlight is less accurate when the count is small, so we can run into that sometimes with the pedestrian movements. But we can do that. Yeah, so if we want to go with 6, which ones do we think we want to drop off?
Can we skip back to the Gordon Shelton footbridge real quick?
Sure.
I want to, I think, better understand Adam's information and Kevin's information, and maybe share some information I have. So, Adam, you were talking about the dashed portion that's funded.
Right.
Right. So this footbridge, this is talking about the straight part between Normandy Avenue and the path that goes over the canal. So Kevin, was he talking about the dashed portion, or was he talking about the straight portion?
He didn't give me a lot of description, but he did say the footpath that goes to Normandy Avenue, the bridge that goes to Normandy Avenue. So maybe he's talking about.
So the city is planning to remove that. The city is planning to remove.
There's 2 of them.
Out of the 5 locations.
I think the confusion is there are 2 bridges that link together Normandy Avenue and the canal path. One of them is shown on the screen right there.
Yeah.
And the other one is west of this, up near Friends of the Rappahannock.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little, like, 8-spot parking lot right across Fall Hill from Friends of the Rappahannock, which has a dedicated little footbridge over to the canal path. The city has proposed to not replace that little.
So it's that one. He told me it was the Gordon B. Shelton one, so maybe he was confused as well.
So,
well, no, that's the thing, though. I think it connects. Both of those do the same thing. They connect Normandy Avenue to.
Right.
So let me chime in real quick, because I just got a presentation on Tuesday at the Pathways Committee.
Okay.
From Assistant City Manager. City's planning to remove 4 out of the 5. The only one they plan to keep is north of Fall Hill, next to FOR.
Really?
Really.
Oh, that's a new thing. I hadn't heard of that.
Yeah.
Boy, okay. Well, that changes the calculus a little bit.
Well, in that case, there is, I think, an argument to say that that makes this data potentially more valuable.
Sure.
If it cannot be collected in the future, or if it can influence the decision.
And where was this information from again? I'm sorry.
It's from the city.
The city?
Yeah.
Okay, then you guys can make the decision.
Terry, are we moving on here? I have a question.
I think she's still trying to figure out whether or not we're going to beat any out.
What I need you guys to do,
Actually.
but you can, so your question, go ahead.
Yeah, it is. It's actually a question for, Brian. The Chatham Bridge is where the East Coast Greenway and the Potomac Heritage Trail cross over the river. And I was wondering if that would weigh in to be a good place for a counter. What do you think?
So with Chatham Bridge, I'm wondering, so to me, the most beneficial locations would be those where there's a potential for a future connection, right? And we all know that, you know, at one point at least, we were planning to extend Belmont Ferry Farm Trail actually to Ferry Farm. But that's kind of dropped off the budget for now. I think the desire is still there. The question in my mind is there really going to be that many people walking up Kings Highway until then? Probably not. So I don't know how useful a counter at that location would be unless we just want to get a feel for how many people are coming to and from the city from Stafford. So from that perspective, putting it on an existing trail, it might be useful information. Might kind of provide some insight into the potential future use when it gets extended. So, I guess I was operating
operating as an assumption, which may be erroneous, that these counters were counting both walkers and bikers.
They do.
Yes.
They do.
They do? Okay.
But I think the bikers have to be on this path. If I mean, I've done that route on my bike just a week ago, and it's crazy from there to there, but I'm on the road.
Yeah. Well, anyone can come in, off the northern end of Chatham Bridge, will have to be on the road.
Right.
Unless they go up the Belmont Path.
Right, which kind of precludes them from getting counted by this at least.
The only possible advantage is if we had a counter on the bridge to counter going. Because once they get off the bridge, well, they have to go on the roads and have to go Route 3, either east on Route 3 or Route 3 up to the right and turn.
Right.
Up where the East Coast Greenway would go, or circle around on the Belmont Trail.
I don't recall, Carrie, does the counter differentiate between pedestrians and cyclists? No, okay.
Here between.
Nor cars.
And.
If you put it close enough, it will get cars.
Yep.
It will get whatever passes.
Over there.
Okay, so, any comments on the list we have here? I'd like to go ahead and narrow this down and act on it tonight.
We've actually spent too long trying to.
Yeah, this is,
I need to get the.
kind of dragged on too long, so.
Well, I'm happy to collapse one right now. So the Spotsylvania Parkway Trail on the east of 95 and Hospital Boulevard Shared Use Path, those two come together at an intersection. They're all kind of in the same area. I would think if we could just kind of locate it at or near the intersection of Hospital Boulevard and Spotsylvania Parkway Trail, they're both trails coming together, that would be a good location. You only need one. So that would be my thinking there. It's around the Silver Collection Apartments. There's a number of medical office type of, there's the Spotsylvania Regional Medical Center, and the Alexander's Crossing project starting to develop now to the south of the hospital, and they're going to extend the path down Hospital Boulevard further because that road's extending. So I'd collapse those in one spot, and then I would advocate
I wanted the
for
JM,
value.
kids,
So that'd be two.
get them to school there, so it's
Yeah.
big ways. And for the university.
Get it down to
So,
6?
there's a lot of
Yeah.
campuses. I was gonna kind of suggest that we get some more information from the city for this until the next meeting, because what I'm worried about is, losing a bridge is kind of a big thing. So if we can use the information from the study to help protect an existing bridge, that for me might be higher priority than trying to extend another trail somewhere else. So I don't know, is there a particular deadline or reason that you want to move this tonight?
Well, only because we've been trying to work on it for 6 months.
I know.
What if we hold, so we have 3 jurisdictions that we're doing this in realistically. What if we hold 2 spots for Fredericksburg and you guys decide?
Yeah,
I like that.
You guys like that idea?
I like what you're saying, we need more time.
Two, so that works.
Yeah, because that's, what he just said was like something new to me.
And then you can put the counter out
Yes.
now
Yes.
on one of the other locations so that it's at least counting while you're making up your mind about the last
Yeah.
two.
Okay, so that means, you have 2 to pick from.
Yeah, so, I was thinking of how beneficial do you think the Stony Creek one would be, Jacob?
Oh, goodness.
That's your next board, so.
Yeah.
So I think I heard 9 is down to 7, is that correct? Meaning we've already ruled out the Spotsylvania east of 95 and the hospital shared use path?
We would collapse those into one.
Into one.
Those 2 to 1.
Now 9 is down to 8.
We'd have Portland Park, so that'd be the 2 in Spotsy as far as I'm concerned. Stony Creek.
Get it, to look it down to 6.
I'm trying to.
We're giving each jurisdiction.
Oh, this
Directly
Stony
with,
Creek one is in Spotsylvania.
It is.
What?
It's Fallon Trail.
It is Spotsylvania.
Yeah, okay.
The wall on.
So not that one.
So.
I have a question.
I did that one, but it's your.
So let me ask you this.
There are no rules
because
against that.
I'm going to throw this out there because the 2 that I think I had identified were, the 3 I identified were the one we were talking about. I guess my question is, where did this come from? the Stony Creek.
Oh, I don't know who, that one,
That was my
remember I
suggestion.
did, okay, I did
Spotsy?
an email. I did an email, and whoever responded gave me suggestions, and that's what made it onto the list.
I don't think we were limited to our own jurisdiction.
I understand.
Just whatever.
I mean, for what it's worth, I would say we are certainly interested in getting Courthouse Road also sidewalks. I will tell you right now, though, our focus has been primarily on Lafayette Boulevard and getting Lafayette Boulevard secured with sidewalks. We already have Smart Scale Round 4 with sidewalk projects. We have a Smart Scale Round 5 that's a candidate for sidewalks. I think logically would start moving to Courthouse Road after that, but
I would say go ahead and take this one off.
I would, just because I hadn't really thought about this one.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay.
I just mention it because I personally see people there on a
You're
regular
right.
basis.
Right,
but-
I get you.
That's why it just came to
The
mind.
primary reason I focused on the ones I did is because I know we have applied in the past or are really focused on expanding existing network in those areas, closing gaps or with roads coming online. I just don't know of any project targeted here right now that I can even tie it to some other intersection improvement or what have you, so,
That makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah, I think that one's good.
I'm sorry, I got lost. I didn't even, I forgot that this.
No, it's fine.
Down
we have two for Stafford.
Yeah,
For Stafford.
The problem with having two Courthouse Road.
That was the thing, I'm like, Stafford Courthouse Road, I guess.
Why did they do that?
Till I saw that M&T Bank, which is now gonna be Starbucks,
When are you
actually.
guys gonna change?
Yeah, that's right. I saw that.
People come to our meetings and go, it's on Courthouse Road, and I'm going
Which one?
that doesn't sound like the Courthouse Road I'm thinking of. Very
Now, this
difficult.
is very close to my Wawa, gotcha.
All right, so what are we down to now?
So you get to pick two, basically Stafford.
Okay.
Because Fredericksburg is having two that they're gonna figure out.
I only have two left, right?
And, yeah, and Spotsy has two,
So,
so. What do we got? What are, Furnace Road and
Chatham Bridge.
Are those what you want, or do you have something else in mind?
I don't have any other ideas at this point.
Okay. Well, there we go.
Yeah.
We will put it on the Chatham Bridge.
Will there be a schedule, or will you announce, and so did you decide whether you're gonna do 2 months and 2 months, and one month at a time?
So,
Because the cool thing about it is, it sounds like you have something that's a constant. You have a VDOT counter at one location, and they're 12 months out of the year, so you have a way of comparing, seasons at each location if you're not doing it 2 months at the same time.
that's what we'll do. We'll do opposite months throughout the year. So
1 month and 1 month.
1 month over here and 1 month over here at different times of
Right.
year. We also have a whole year's data at Fall Hill Avenue, Falls Canal Trail, sorry, from last year. So that's another one we can do. All right, so we're good. All right, then we need a motion to approve these.
Is there a motion to approve
I
the
motion
counter
to approve
project list?
specifications.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Great,
Thank you.
thank you.
All
All
right.
right, Smart Scale update. Ms. Barber.
All right, here we are in round 5. We're in May. Right now, we have submitted all of our pre-applications, and VDOT is going over them. Let's see, we will have to remove one project from the GWRC list because we're only allowed 4 slots for each. So in FAMPO, we already removed a Route 3 project, but GWRC has its work cut out for it, removing one. Next slide. So you guys have seen these before. Let's go over them briefly. In Stafford, we have US 1 and Lake Hill intersection improvements. These are intersection improvements, and then there's going to be a shared use path. It goes to Forbes Street stops, is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
And a bus stop here. They're still working out some particulars on this one. Next slide. Then Route US 1, Route 28 up in Stafford as well, and some turn lanes to help with the traffic on that road. Warren Road, that's east of I-95 on US 17 Business. It's going to be a section of sidewalk. And Dixon Street in the city, that is going to be a section of, here's the city over here, sidewalk coming out of the city here, along with widening of Dixon Road. And then this is going to be a shared use path that connects with the shared use path inside of Dixon Park. And Lafayette, this is going to be this picture does not encompass it, it's quite long. It starts up at Wellington Woods, and it's sections of sidewalk with a bus stop up there to complete gaps, basically, all the way down to Harrison Road. The VCR project, which is Fredericksburg has part of that, the Bankside Trail, and then there is a section we were talking, actually, Mr. Olives was talking about earlier from the train station, and then another piece of shared use path over here that connects with the future project, which is this double traffic circle on Kenmore Avenue in Lafayette. And then there'll be another piece way out by 95 at the terminus of the VCR trail. And then another project is widening 95 to 8 lanes with a new commuter bus. And we have a US 1 bike and pedestrian improvements. This is a Spotsy-Fredericksburg combined project. And it basically provides a shared use path from the VCR trail all the way down to Harrison Road with crosswalks at Hudgens Road.
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah,
Where is that gonna run? Sorry.
Okay, this is Route 1.
Yeah,
Up here is Kings Mill Drive and the VCR trail.
all right.
This yellow line would be the new piece,
Oh,
shared use path.
that's awesome. How long is that?
It's expensive and we probably won't get it all, but that's the concept.
I missed.
Next
We're
slide.
busy negotiating to
Yeah.
make people work.
Let's see, and then the next one is in Spotsy. It's at the intersection of Route 1 and 608, we've got turn lanes, and then we have a big chunk of shared use path from Massaponax on down to Guinea Station Road, with a path going to the school.
that'll also fit long-term plans for the East Coast Greenway headed down towards the Caroline County connection. So pieces at a time.
Yeah, the end hope is shared use path all the way down Route 1, like even into Caroline County, because they have plans to put shared use path.
We just need to formalize that with Craig and Caroline and just make sure that this time we do the connection, that's it. Because right now, the East Coast Greenway Alliance has it on Guinea Station, and
I know.
so I need to lock it on Route 1 and forever hold our peace, hopefully. Because, you know, for a while, we were also talking Mud Tavern. So
We could have a meeting with them and,
if we can get it settled, that'd be a great item over the next year, hopefully. Our comp plan supports it either way. We're in good shape. We've already primed it up.
All right, so our next steps. Like I said, the FAMPO list has had one removed, so we have one from GWRC to remove. We're doing economic development data. Thank you, Spotsylvania, for already starting to work on that. That's a lot of work. Like, I don't know if everybody knows what that is, but basically we get credit for improving economic development with our projects. So we have to give site plans, development plans, zoning requests and all that stuff in with our applications so that we get extra points. And we have to collect those things from the localities. All right, the applications are due August 1st, and then crossing our fingers. Any questions?
How much does safety, when you read those, how much does safety come? How does it rate, I guess?
Safety is a big one.
Talk about economic development.
Yeah, so economic development, safety, congestion, help me out here, I haven't looked at it in a while, but there are six.
Safety is one.
Yeah, safety is one of the big ones. Yeah.
I'm just curious, I drive down Warrenton Road all the time, and, you know, there are people out using that, and there really aren't any sidewalks or aren't anything, and that is, to me, is such a safety that.
Safety is a major criteria in the evaluation, and they ask you to match your project with VTron's needs. And on the VTron's needs list map, they indicate where there's a congestion problem, where there's a safety problem, and it's based on data. How many accidents, how many injuries, if there's been a death. And that data we have to put in the application, because if you fall on one of those corridors that is a V-Trans safety need, you immediately get a bunch of extra points for your application.
And not just that, but now there's the Virginia Pedestrian Safety Action Plan, which isn't just about previous accidents, it's about all the factors that might cause a future accident. So there's credit for that too. They have what they call PSAP corridors, which are areas that they think can be improved with projects. So you're encouraged to put projects along those corridors.
That I didn't know, so I've just learned something.
Any other questions?
All right.
All right, thank you. And then the last time I have to stand up here tonight, so we have talked about this a little bit in the past, but BPAC is the only committee that does not have a representative on the policy committee. So there's nobody there to voice the bike ped community's opinions about things to the policy committee. There isn't a real liaison back and forth. So this came about because BPAC didn't exist for a long time, and a few years ago it was started up just as an ad hoc committee to put together the active transportation plan. And then I revived it and made it into a standing committee. So we just need to fix this oversight. This is just basically a letter requesting representation on the policy committee. Now that does mean that as a group you would appoint someone to be the representative who would then go to the policy committee meetings.
Which means once a month.
Third Monday?
Currently.
Okay.
They don't meet in July or December.
Okay.
So it's 10 meetings, not 12.
Yeah, I have a question. Carrie, are there other committees like ours that have a representative on the
The
policy?
Citizens Transportation Advisory Committee has a representative. So you guys are.
Is that kind of a helpful, is it looked upon as a helpful thing, or?
Well, it's helpful in that if you guys voted on something, or if you guys have an opinion on something, that person then can take that to the policy committee and say, BPAC talked about this, this is what we think.
Okay.
You actually advise them.
Looking at the website, FAMPO's website, that would be a non-voting member.
It would be a non-voting member, yes.
Get a vote like
Right, yeah.
advisors too.
So only
Okay.
certain members of the policy, yeah, you
Yeah,
get
right.
speaking time.
In the room.
You get speaking time, you can give your opinion, you can influence, but you can't vote. Not all PC members are voting members. Like BDOT, for example, is not a voting member.
Right. Got it.
So, yes?
Let's
I'm
go.
gonna ask a silly question. Do you have to live in the region to do it?
But you have to be on BPAC.
I mean, do you have to actually, like hypothetically, if I lived in two places, could I still, if I wanted to do it and I were elected, could I still do that? Or if somebody else wanted to live in two?
Sorry, I think I'm confused by the question. You wouldn't be on BPAC if you didn't live locally.
Right, but if you, okay. If you live in two places at once, you know, like if I had a house in LA and a house in Virginia, would that be possible to still serve on a committee in the region?
Well, I guess so if it's based on your residency in Virginia.
Oh, so it's okay. Oh, okay. All right, that's good to know, thank you.
Okay. All right, so are we in favor of sending this letter and asking them to appoint a representative?
Seems appropriate.
Turn that to you, sorry. All first.
Yeah. So, any other comments on this before we take action on it?
You know, if I could, with the new infrastructure bill and the emphasis given to bikes and walking and so forth, I think it's just follows along with that. I mean, it's just seemed to me like a given that it should be something that they would want representation from this committee.
Especially with the new requirements, yeah.
All right, if there are no other comments, is there a motion to
I
approve?
motion to send this letter.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
All right,
Aye. Opposed?
a good idea.
All right.
Thank you all.
Moving on to correspondence. You have something for us here?
just an interesting little thing that we saw. So there's an ultra runner who is running the entire East Coast Greenway. That's from Key West to Maine.
Yeah, through hike.
And he's averaging 40 miles a day running.
Wow.
So,
It's just, they're so.
and he's doing it to raise $30,000.
Do you have like a safety escort?
Yeah, exactly.
His wife is following him on a bike.
That helps.
That only confuses the issue.
Yeah, so there's probably some kind of support.
They're an app tracking him.
And he's 50 years.
This is gonna be like a Forrest Gump.
Box of chocolates there.
His experience on Benchmark Road in Spotsy is precisely why I'm advocating for Benchmark Road and East-West study to be studied, so we can get something more substantive there, because that's a nasty little place to be right now.
It's kind of terrifying. Like, I hope he understands that the East Coast Greenway in many places is like Benchmark Road.
Yeah, it's a theory. What do they say, 35% done? I mean, 65 left.
35% what?
I think it's 35% of it's done.
Yeah.
So that means
Yeah,
we have
most of it is not done.
65 that is, Benchmark Road or Route 1 or,
Road, there you go.
yeah, it's gonna be, it'll be an interesting.
So is he asking us to do anything?
No, I just saw this and thought you all would find it interesting.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, has he already come through our area?
No, I think he's just beginning.
Is he gonna like video blog that or anything? 'Cause that'd be kinda cool.
Yeah, probably. I'll find out if he's got a blog.
40 miles a day, what does that work out to?
It would be cool,
Like 1,000 miles
if we
down.
could meet him and have a little tete-a-tete.
Yeah, that would be
Meet him
cool.
on the bridge, meet him on the bridge. That would be cool.
That 25 days.
Champagne.
Yeah.
Ultra runner gets drunk and cannot complete East Coast Greenway. That's it for correspondence.
Okay, thank you. All right, staff reports.
I do have a staff report. The Hazel Run Bridge update. Last week, we went out for a site visit with VDOT, and VDOT has agreed to take over that project and hopefully get it built.
And we have now, hopefully with the policy committee's vote, fully funded it again. So hopefully now we've got the money and we've got the soliciting entity, hopefully we can get it built quickly.
Where is that bridge gonna be?
Oh, it's at the terminus of the VCR trail, like right after the
Okay, got it.
It's to span the Hazel Run,
That's cool. That's a while.
go farther.
Awesome.
Now that I've learned that VDOT's taking this over, I don't wanna delay our night tonight, but I do have a question. Is VDOT aware of what the city had discussed with the, Kingswood Community HOA?
Actually, I have asked the city representative that was on the visit to reach out to you,
Okay,
because you have all the history, and he needs it because
Okay.
he's gonna be reaching out to Kingswood.
okay,
So,
all right.
I'll get his name again and.
Long story short, the city had reached out to the Kingswood community about utilizing Kingswood Boulevard to bring in the bridge structure and basically construction equipment to get access to the Hazel Run for staging that bridge and building it. And they would have to cross from Kingswood Boulevard over an HOA parcel to get to it. In exchange, at least at this HOA, and this is my concern, is the citizens were under the impression, obviously, management has now changed VDOT, not the city people that were involved. I don't know if Doug Fawcett's still with the city, Eric Nelson's no longer there. Basically, they were willing to do it, but the city had suggested, like, okay, well, we'll leave you with a private connection over your HOA lot, kind of in exchange for potentially damaging the the parcel as we cross this bridge and construction. They're going to basically leave a private connection to the VCR trail, and I was there, so.
Right, I did tell VDOT that was the belief at the time, and
Yeah.
VDOT was having none of that,
They'll have.
Having none of that,
having none.
well.
In the sense of what?
Like, they were not interested in building a private entrance. They said anything that they would do would be public.
That wasn't the understanding, and I know, like, we had board members, the president at that meeting as well. That's interesting. I mean, the fact of the matter is, we're not, in terms of our planning, we're not trying to funnel the Virginia Central down Kingswood Boulevard to Harrison Road. It's an HOA managed community. The community was very much against it. They did like the idea of continuing it down to and tunneling it and going out. One of the problems with the dead ending of that trail right now is because there is no good point of access for Kingswood residents, they blaze their own trails to get to it, which means they're trespassing over different lots, and then the community starts complaining, and they actually thought it was more valuable to have kind of a fixed connection. But with the understanding that we're not trying to run the public trail down through there. The two trails that we have envisioned is continuing the VCR to the base of 95 and then onward. And then also what you saw was extending it down Route 1 corridor and hitting Harrison Road, and then running Harrison Road out where we pick up a bunch of residential communities. There's also commercial frontages that have, the spin-off benefit economically for that. And we have plans to widen Harrison Road and the Harrison Road Bridge over 95. So our comp plan identifies that as the VCR auxiliary trail, that whole kind of Harrison Road route. I'd like to discourage any thinking, because I'll tell you, it's just going to stir up a bee's nest, I would think, if all of a sudden we're plugging a public trail in where I thought this was already settled. Yeah.
Their concern was building a bridge and nothing else, was a bridge to nowhere. It would need to have some kind of connection to a residential development.
Well, it would, but it would be
That's not,
fine.
How do you control that?
that's not in the scope of the project that was funded.
Right.
How do you control make sure that the people using that path are only members of the Kingswood?
You sign it, and, it's like anything where somebody's trespassing on a private road that's not supposed to be there. At that point, it becomes an enforcement
So
issue, honestly.
like the court, or the basketball court at the clubhouse?
Yeah, I don't know how else to do it. It's like anything that you have a posted speed limit and somebody goes 80 miles an hour over it, you know what I mean? It's the best we try to do. The long story short is we're not trying to funnel all that traffic down through that community.
Right.
And, that's interesting though, because, for instance, the smart scale project that we have, I know in the future there's a tunnel, but if this smart scale goes forward, this VCR regional,
You're going to have it there.
it's going to dead end at the bottom of I-95
Yeah.
without a connection somewhere. So I don't know how you feel about that. And I know the city's angle at the time was that it was kind of a trade-off, like you let us use and potentially, damage this HOA property, and in exchange for the burden or allowing this construction machinery, we were going to kind of help you out. That's kind of how it was.
It's kind of where they're going with it too, because they're going to have to get in there for access and damage it, and they're talking about building something, but then they weren't really keen on it being a private thing. But this is all.
They could talk to the Kingswood HOA at that point.
This is beginning discussion, so I wanted them to contact you because you have the history on it.
I was there. I just hate to change the understanding.
That's my staff report.
Could I say two things unrelated to this? I haven't told Ariel this, but there are two bike projects in our region that I'm wanting to get some improvements on. One is in the new SIP, there is I'm going to say $62 million, it could be 64, for the renovation of the US 1 bridge over the Rappahannock. But there's no discussion of putting some sort of facility or site to get across that bridge. And I would encourage you to put pressure on VDOT and the two jurisdictions to force VDOT to, when they redesign these renovations, that they widen one of the spaces on the side wide enough for bikes and pedestrians to safely cross that bridge. Because when you're going to spend $62 or $64 million and you don't bother to do that, when are we next going to have an opportunity to do that, right? No one's going to come back 3 years later and put in a cycle path as like a concrete extension on the side of the bridge. It just doesn't work like that. You're going to spend all this money. So please help me to just encourage VDOT when they do the design of this renovation to do that They did it on the Chatham Bridge very successfully, really like what they did.
Yeah, it's really very
I'm
nice.
not telling them how to do it, what design to use or anything like that, I'm just saying some sort of accommodation that will allow that to happen. I think we need to. I'm gonna start talking to them. I hope you all will, in your various capacities, put pressure if you can.
Also, the infrastructure bill theoretically means you have to consider
start doing it.
non-motorized on bridges.
The other one, and this one I'm afraid I'm slightly embarrassing the city, but there is this supposed multi-use path on one side of Cowan Boulevard. It's just concrete. Kind of looks like a sidewalk if you don't know any better. But I think the intention is, and it's certainly in the city's plans, that it is a multi-use path. It's just not. There's no signage, there's no marking, there's no indication that you're allowed to cycle there. And I would urge the city people to just light a bit of fire there, that we can actually turn what is already concrete, already laid. There are ramps at the connection on US 1, and there's the various pieces already built. But it's kind of not known that this is supposed to be a cycle path. It's just a piece of concrete. And it's actually really cheap to put, I think, relative to put the signage and markings and other things to actually make it a cycle path. And then the East-West study is going to look at connecting it on the other end in Central Park with the Fall Hill cycle path and as close as we get to the Spotsylvania Mall, right? Because people want to go shopping, they want to go to these facilities, they want to go to the cinema, but it's not connected. And if students from the university, for example, want to go up Cowan Boulevard, that's the obvious thing to do. Get on the cycle path with your bicycle, cycle up to the shopping area. But I don't think anyone actually knows it's supposed to be a cycle path. It's in the plan somewhere.
It's outside of Cowan Boulevard.
Yeah,
Right.
it's there. I've walked on it, but it's just
It doesn't
not.
look like it. It looks like a walking path, a sidewalk.
It looks like a sidewalk, but actually in the comp plan or one of the city plans, I can't think which one, it actually says multi-use path. And no one's ever just gone out and put up the signage, put up the markings, put up the, check that either end you can get on and off this nice concrete things that are out there. And I think we could easily turn it into a really nice cycle path, and the university students will use it because that's their most direct route to get to the shopping areas. That's the way to get there. So if we can just kind of put all those bits on, the paint and the signage and everything, I think it would be used.
So what's the width?
I don't know, I haven't looked at it. But I know that the city considers it officially to be a multi-use path,
It's about 10 feet, I think.
but it's just, it's probably wide enough, but it's just not indicated as such. So anyone who moves into the area, they don't know this is a bike path. New students turn over every other year, and I guess no one told them, hey, if you take your bike up here, you can cycle all the way to the shopping area.
Okay. Anything else?
Give me, did everybody sign the sheet?
Yeah.
Where did it end up?
It hasn't made itself to me.
It's over there somewhere.
So it's on this chair back here.
Somewhere.
Do you mind passing it to folks over?
All right, we'll move on to member reports.
Chairman, I have a couple items, if I could hit real quick.
Sure.
I guess everybody knows that I'm here representing the, among other things, the Dolphin Railroad Heritage Trail. When the U.S. Navy constructed the railroad, they ran the railroad right through a minority church cemetery. And ever since we took over the trail, we've been trying to effect a way around it, a bypass, if you will. We're getting close. The proposed route around the cemetery would go through agricultural zoned lands, okay, A1 and A2, as we call them in the county. Neither one of those allow recreation trails of any kind. So what I'm working with the county on is coming up with language in the zoning ordinance that that would accommodate, recreation trails, active transportation trails, okay? And so what I'm looking for is examples of language in other ordinances that accommodate trails in agricultural districts.
Okay.
I have one from Loudoun County. I was at a meeting earlier this week, and a Loudoun rep, raised her hand and said, yes, we've got that. So I'd like to gather as many examples as I could of that.
So this would be in a public access easement across these properties, or?
We're not sure whether our route around the cemetery would be an easement across the agricultural zone lands, or BPAC ownership path.
Oh, a strip of land.
Yeah, we're not sure which way that'll go.
Okay.
But which
Appreciate it.
way it goes, and will still be agriculture zone.
Yep.
A1 or A2. So we're working with the county on much of the language.
Yep.
They're just beginning to work with the county on that, because the ordinance is under review now, and they're hoping to get a new ordinance approved by sometime late next year.
Yeah, I know in our ordinance, we have public facilities as an allowed use in A1, which I would think if you're in a public easement, or obviously if it's owned land available for public use, then that would qualify there. But I have to look through our definitions, but if I find anything relevant, I'll send it to you.
Okay, that'd be great.
As a public parks, we have things, some of the public facilities, yeah.
Okay. So that'd be helpful, yeah.
The other thing is, if you are looking at dividing the property just for a linear, that may run into like the ability to divide that way because it's not a buildable lot. I will tell you, in our subdivision ordinance, we're looking at trying to do something, and trails was kind of my inspiration, and I think underground utilities as well, is calling them infrastructure lots.
That's another issue.
They're not meant for anything else but linear projects, so you don't have to build a house on them or building on them. They're linear projects, they're serving a purpose, and they're built for that, and that's not yet in our code, though. But we're trying to get that.
Okay.
The way we've kind of handled those situations in Stafford is we don't call them lots, as in something to be developed residentially.
Like for a house.
It would be essentially an open space parcel, and so you'd have restrictions in the plat that would prohibit it from being developed for residential use, which kind of gets it around some of the lot shape requirements and that kind of thing. So.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. Helpful. Okay. The other item, we all have the painful memories of the design for the Middleton Bridge across the river down there, okay? And we all remember that literally at the last minute, Maryland took the walking and the bike lanes off the design at the last minute. And their excuse was, well, the bridge with the lanes costs more than the bridge without the lanes, so therefore we're going to go without the lanes. Which drove everybody crazy. But there's a new concept that's just coming up of keeping the old bridge in place and dedicating that for riding bikes, walking. Okay, and we're actually getting a little bit of traction there. There's a meeting that we're going to have next week with the comptroller of Maryland, and he's agreed to come down and look at us and talk to us about this. So just an information thing. There's no action for you, anybody here. Just an information thing that idea is alive. So
great. Very good. DRC, Debbie, do you have anything? Okay.
Can you
Debbie,
hear me?
can you hear
I
us?
said no. Can you hear me?
No, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you.
FCC,
Up here in the audience.
any updates? Anything?
I am going to ask another club member to step in as my role. Mr. Bonds has come as my guest tonight, and I'll be filling in as an alternate for the Fredericksburg Cyclist Club. The Fredericksburg Cyclist Club is jamming. We do nothing but ride our bikes, and we wish you would join us more often.
There you go.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All right. Jacob, do you have anything?
No updates.
Adam?
Nothing from Friends of the Wrapping.
All right. What about our citizen reps?
Hi.
Any?
The school season is picking back up again, so I just wanted to mention that, you know, our roadways and our pathways, our bicycle paths leading from Courthouse Road, where I'm on the Willow side of Courthouse Road, and there are no bike paths anywhere near Mine Road that would allow for going from school to school to school. So I'm just wondering, quick question, I had this thought, what if we had bike racks on buses? Not Fred bus, but school buses?
School buses.
I don't know if this was someone else's thought, it just carried over, and I was like, revelation. Bike racks on school buses, because sometimes they can't go all the way directly to your house, and you have to walk home, and it can be dark if you're walking home in a rural area. So to keep our kids safe, and to help expedite the walking process, bike paths to schools are so important. Literally, Stafford County is, to my understanding, increasing their budgets for the school district, and even in Prince William County, there's a lot of hiring going on in schools, K through 12, and a lot of building, and a lot of kids coming in from different areas. And so if anybody's a parent here or wants to be a parent, that is a big deal to have children safe, coming home safe, going to school safe, and being at school safe. So, you know, if there's anything that anyone can recommend, securing funds from the transportation budget to help expedite that process and make it possible. I really think there needs to be a focus in Stafford County on children and how we're deliberating our roadways to support their growth and development. So that's what I'll say lead with.
Thank you. Aaron?
Yeah, just, 4 quick ones. We talked about the bridges earlier, or the canal path. City's doing some good things. There's a lot of bike racks downtown. You guys may have seen that have been recently installed. It's kind of a second round.
Links,
They've even got kind of the downtown aesthetic.
Yeah.
So just kind of kudos to the city and the downtown folks for doing that. In terms of future things, the city is also evaluating reducing speed limits from 25 to 20 in certain downtown areas. So it plays pretty well into bike path safety downtown. And the last one, this is more on a personal note, but I mentioned this to Ian earlier, but anybody who wants to join, Adam, and some others are hosting first of will hopefully be many social bike rides around town. There's opportunities just to highlight active transportation. It's a mild, casual ride. We're going to show off the new Chatham Bridge connection and go over to Falmouth from downtown Fredericksburg. It's only about 6 miles, and stop for a refreshment at Amy's Cafe.
Can we have that as one of our meetings?
Thursday night at 6 o'clock. It's out of the ordinary, but we can time the next one for this meeting.
And it sounds safe enough for even me to survive. So.
Yeah.
Happy.
So, more the merrier.
That's our organization, 15-minute Fredericksburg.
yeah.
That we've started up and growing. Maybe we should link up with the.
Should, yes. We're hammering the Chatham Bridge.
Day bikers that were, you know.
We have bikers of all shapes and sizes.
This would be very much a cool down for you.
Yeah, I got fitted for a bike recently, and the guy that fitted me said, "You're not built like most cyclists," so.
How very dirty.
Was that a compliment?
I took it that way, yes, sir.
How very dirty.
That's pretty cool.
Thank you. Is that it?
Thank you.
I think that's everything. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Cynthia.